Before we dive into today's episode, I have something truly special to share. Next September, I'll be leading an intimate women's retreat through the south of France and northern Italy, and you're invited. Picture this: mornings exploring the colorful markets of the French Riviera, afternoons sipping wine, and a hotel view with golden Mediterranean sunsets. Whether you love photography, food, or just want to reconnect with your playful creative self, this trip is designed for you. Spots are limited, so if all this sounds like your kind of adventure, please visit tourwithabsolutely.com and look for the tour France and Italy with Crystal. You can also send me a message or check out the show notes. Hey guys, my name's Crystal Kenny, and I'm in love with creating. All things artistic and imagination involved. I'm an American girl who chased her creative dreams all the way to Paris, France, making a living using photography. This podcast takes you inside the stories of all the artsy folks I've met along the way and gives you that extra push to discover your creative gifts. The desire to create is deeply inside each and every one of us, and I give you the tools and inspiration to find a new way of living a more creative life. This is La Vie Creative, the podcast. Claudine Hemingway is a descendant of famed writer Ernest Hemingway. We bumped into each other at a party and decided to team up and dive deep into French history, but with a twist, by bringing a spotlight to those lesser-known creatives in France. This is History with a Hemingway. So welcome back to Paris History Avec Hemingway. We're here with Claudine, my favorite person to chat with about all things French history related. And of course, we're going to be talking about another woman in French history. Not all of our people are obviously French. Today, we are talking about Julia Child.
Yes, we are. And okay, I know I say this every time.
You're so excited.
But she really is. Like, if I had to do a top 5, Julia is in it because she's just amazing on so many different levels.
I didn't know that much about her before I started reading up for our talk, and we're going to be reading the book about her too, but her life was fascinating after reading about her.
Yeah, she really did some fascinating things, and especially, for what she did at the age that she was and what she became even was just also pretty stunning. So we'll just get right to it.
Let's do it.
So Julia Child was born on August 15th, 1912 in Pasadena, and she was the oldest of 3 kids, and her father, John McWilliams Jr., was a very, very right-wing, very Republican father, and he was married to Julia, and they called her Caro, her mother, and she was a paper company heiress.
Oh, wow. So they were rich.
Yeah. So they had a lot of money. And Julia, when she was born, and, everybody knows if they've seen Julia or they've seen the movie Julie and Julia, she was, a very tall woman. And all 3 of their kids were like monstrously tall, like Amazon tall.
Models.
Yeah. So she, when she finished high school, and she decided to go off to Smith College. And at the time she was 6'2". And she decided she wanted to play tennis and basketball and golf while she was also studying history. And in 1934, she graduated, and she went to New York because she decided she wanted to become a famous writer. And she thought it was going to be, she'd just go to New York and just start writing and be a famous writer. She found out it wasn't that easy. So she ended up getting a copyright job for like a furniture company.
Definitely a downgrade from being a famous writer.
Definitely not the, throw your hat up. What was it? Mary Tyler Moore, throw your hat up in the air. And I've made it, but
not glamorous.
Yeah, she still did it. But so then she decided she wanted to enroll in the Army. And when she first started she wanted to be in part of the Women's Army Corps, but they said she was too tall. They turned her away because she was too tall. So she ended up joining the OSS, which is the Office of Strategic Services, and it would later be known, what we know today, as the CIA.
That's so cool. She was a spy as well.
Yeah. So she became the top secret researcher and for the OSS. So she had all of this stuff, passing through, her desk. She was also the assistant to one of the head people. But what I thought was hilarious is that she assisted in developing a shark repellent.
I know. When I read that too, I was like, what?
Yeah. I was
How
like,
many
what?
lives has she lived?
Yeah, so because at first I was like, what? But apparently they put these like underwater explosives, and the sharks are really curious, and they kept going up to him and like bumping him or doing whatever sharks do, and like Jaws, and they would set them off. And so they kept like exploding. And so she like helped them create this repellent that sharks would stay away from, which is,
I'm curious why she even knew anything about that.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, yeah, who knows? I mean, there's not a lot of information exactly as far as what she did for that, but it's
Yeah.
just so hilarious that she was involved with a shark repellent.
Since she was involved with the CIA, it kind of makes me wonder if like she got famous in cooking to get closer to other people to continue spying. Like, was
Yeah.
she a spy her whole life? We'll never know.
Yeah, maybe the cordon bleu. She was trying to find a course that would, that would advance her shark repellent skills.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going super conspiracy theory right now, but I'm like, this all just seems way too weird.
I know, it's pretty hilarious. But everybody, there's always this thing that came out, I don't know, like 5, 7, 8 years ago that said that, oh, she was a spy. Julia Child was a spy. And I don't know if as far as it was a spy like we think of, like Cloak and Dagger, Mission Impossible spy, like writing like that. But, she was involved in, working basically for one of the head people that basically saw all of the, intel. So she was close to being a spy, but I don't think she was exactly, Mission Impossible spy.
Yeah, not the same.
Yeah, but I'm sure Mission Impossible, I bet there is a movie that has something about sharks in it.
I hope there's a Mission Impossible with Julia Child.
Oh my God, that would be amazing. They'd go into a submarine, but she wouldn't fit because she's so tall.
I mean, they're on like the Mission Impossible like 2 million now. They might as well just throw in some Julia Child.
I know. They should. That'd be amazing. I mean, who could I talk to?
Yeah, let's make it happen. We'll talk to Tom Cruise. No big deal.
We'll give him a call. So when she ended up getting sent over to she was stationed in a place called Kandy, Ceylon. And it's actually what we know today as Sri Lanka.
Oh, cool.
And while she was there, she met Paul Child, and he also was working for the OSS. And it was the summer of 1944, and she met him, and they just instantly were just kind of like, googly eyes at each other. And they became very good friends. They came very close at first. And she was given an award while she was there for her inherent cheerfulness.
So she was always a really happy person.
Yeah. Which also is another hilarious thing. So basically, like the CIA gives out awards for being cheerful.
I think that's adorable. Also, wasn't this like the beginning of the CIA? So maybe it was a little different. They weren't like hunting serial killers or anything.
Exactly.
But we're happy. Let's stop sharks.
It's so cute. It's so cute, and it's just so Julie. I love it. So Paul was actually 10 years older than her. And he was from New Jersey, and he, at one point he had lived in Paris because he was an artist, and he was very worldly and, a true gourmand, and he loved food and wine and everything. And, she was born and bred in her very upper class, Pasadena family where, they didn't exactly eat all those big fancy things, and they didn't go places, even though they had a lot of money. But he was just this worldly man, and he was also much shorter than her. But when you're 6'2", pretty much everybody is.
I think that's really cool that they didn't care. They fell in love anyway.
I know. I think that's I just love them so much. So 2 years later, on September 1st, they ended up getting married. And the day before they got married, though, they were in a car accident. So there's pictures of them on their wedding day where she's got this big bandage on her head and he's got bandages on. And it's just like, it's so perfect for them because they were just like, who cares? We're getting married. Like some people would probably freak out that they have to wear a bandage on, a bride on their wedding day. And, not Julie and Paul, they were just kind of like, we don't care.
We're still getting married. I mean, I love that. That's just so, especially because she came from a rich family. You'd think she'd be a little more, kind of snotty or whatever, but not at all. She was very, just go with the flow, it sounds like.
Yeah, she was extremely, extremely down to earth. She was pretty awesome. But so they got married, and, Julia was never, before this, she was, we know her now as this amazing cook. Before that, she never was because she didn't have to be, because they had, they had servants and they had cooks and they had whatever in their house. So she never had to be. So on their first meal that she made them after they were married, it is just about the grossest thing. She doesn't cook. And this is what she decides to cook: calf brains in red wine sauce.
Oh God, why?
It cracks me up that that's what she, it'd be maybe like, ooh, let's make like steak frites or something. But it was like,
yeah, ew.
and red wine. It's just like,
They sound like such a quirky couple.
yeah. I just think and I guess that he said that it was just absolutely horrible, but he was such a love that he just was just kind of like, oh, it was fine, but she said that she could tell by looking at him that he didn't think so. Thought it was horrible, but she always said, never apologize, never be like, I cooked it too long. And she's like, just never apologize. Just, that's what it is.
I like that. That's a great mentality.
Yeah. So cute. So, but he totally was trying to show her the finer things in life. So she probably thought, oh, I'm going to make something pretty fancy tonight.
But even if that was well done or whatever, she made it taste great. How great can cow brains and red wine taste?
Exactly.
I'm
thinking more should be like red wine with a float of a cow brain.
Oh God, I'm gonna throw up just thinking about that.
The whole thing just sounds gross. But I mean, I guess if you put it with enough, it's kind of like escargot. Like escargot is just soaked in butter and garlic, which anything soaked in butter and garlic is going to be amazing. So, but I just don't know. I would like my red wine normally without a side of calf brains.
Yeah. Wow. No, thank you. Moving on.
Yeah. So in the winter of 1948, he was offered a position to run the visual presentation department of the OSS in Paris. And this was to build, because after the war at this point, and it was to build a Franco-American relations through visual arts. So they were supposed to, he basically was organizing different photographers. He was a photographer, setting all this stuff up, which also it's like, okay, that's a great job. Can we have that?
That sounds so fun. Where's that job for me?
I know. Where's that job now?
Yeah.
So they ended up on November 3rd. At 4:45 in the morning, they arrived at Le Havre on the port, and they, taken the ship over. They packed all their things up. They even brought their car, which was a Buick they called the Blue Flash.
Oh, I love this.
And so, if you've seen the movie, it's really adorable because at the beginning of the movie, it starts with them taking the car off of the boat, lowering it, on straps and stuff down onto the port. And so they got there, and it was her first time in Europe. She'd never been to Europe, but Paul obviously had been. So it was her first time in Europe, and they loaded up, got everything loaded up into the car. And she had said that, he was like the best packer. He could get anything in. And they got the boat off the ship, and all these men put everything in there. And then they basically unloaded it all so Paul could repack it because he didn't like the way they did. Oh. So they got everything loaded, and then they headed to Rouen, and it's the kind of her very famous first meal in France that they went to the restaurant called Le Restaurant La Couronne, and it's one of the oldest. It goes back to 1345. This restaurant.
Wow.
Rouen is where, it's Jeanne d'Arc, and that's everything there is about Joan of Arc. And there's the cathedral there that Monet painted, 7 different times. And so they go to this restaurant, and she orders sole meunière and ends up taking a bite of it and just thinks it's the most amazing thing she's ever eaten in her life.
Oh my gosh. So that changed her life forever because, like you said, before she was not a cook.
Yes. Before she wasn't a cook. So, she's just in there, and she, here's this fish perfectly cooked, just floating in, butter, and she's tasting a French baguette for the first time, and all these things. And she basically is that meal, it literally changed her life.
I love that. You hear that so much in France, especially, that this meal just changed my life. Yeah. And I know even for myself coming to Paris, I didn't cook. I didn't know how to cook. I'm no Julie Childs, but I definitely cook now and I enjoy it. And my parents are always in shock that I actually know how to do something besides microwave something. I think it's just kind of forced on you. You're so inspired here to do that kind of thing.
Yeah, and you have such amazing ingredients. So it's kind of, it's so fun to be able to do that because you could just, go down to this little tiny market and, oh, I'm going to go get these, things. And, oh, look at how perfect this, vegetable is in season, and just go home and cook it up. It's pretty hard not to be inspired there.
Yeah, everybody's a cook here.
Everybody's a cook there, yeah. So they ended up coming into Paris, and they drove through, and they ended up getting a hotel for the first night, and then they ended up finding this apartment, and it was it's at 81 Rue de la Universitaire, University, whatever.
Yeah, university. Yeah, university.
It's close to the Palais Bourbon, which is, really close to the Seine. It's only a few blocks off from the Seine, and it's behind the Palais Bourbon. And she always would call the street Rue de Lou, which is a cute way to remember to say that. But so they found this apartment, and it was a 2-floor apartment.
Wow.
I think it's like a 4 French story building, and it had, they had the second and third floor. And I went there on my very first trip, had to go find it, had to find the address. And then, there's because the Assembly Nationale is in the Palais Bourbon, I think. Mm-hmm. And so there's all these fancy people in their suits walking around. And so I waited, and there's this little tiny triangle outside of her building, and I waited till nobody was around. And then I went up and had to touch the door and had to touch the oh, Julie, you're here. But somebody had opened it right as I was about ready, did go up to the door. So I ended up going into the courtyard, and I was able to see up. And there's these amazing windows that they had in their apartment. And you could I looked up, and all I could think was do the people that live there know who used to live there?
Yeah.
I think that all the time in Paris too. It's do they have any, does that impact their life? I would die to be living in the apartment Julia Child lived in.
I kind of feel like everyone knows where people live, but they just don't care. Yeah. It's very French mentality. That's why celebrities love coming here, because no one cares who they are.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, nobody really cares. But I mean, a lot of French people don't even know who Julia Child is.
Yeah, no, I think most would not.
Yeah, they don't really. I mean, Hemingway, there's still French people that don't know Hemingway, but there definitely is a lot more French people that don't know Julia Child. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But so they ended up moving into this apartment, and I guess it was crazy decorated, it had all these knickknacks hanging on the wall, and she and Paul he took pictures of everything, and then they took all this knickknacks and things down, and so they knew where to put it when they moved out.
That was smart, because they wanted to change everything.
Yeah, because they just were it was just too much. I mean, one wall would have 80 plates or something on it.
Wow. Yeah.
On the wall. So they ended up moving into this apartment, and they, they had actually stayed there for quite a few years, but, she just loved it because at this point, then, now she's going to the little markets, and she's going to all these different places. But at the same time, she was just so bored with everything, because she just, there's all the American wives that were there, they played bridge, or they went to go learn how to make hats, or they did, all these different things. And she was I don't want to do that. I want to do something more with my life.
Yeah.
I want to find something more interesting. So, she ended up finding, a cooking school. And, at first she tried to get enrolled there, and they were just no, that's no, this isn't for you, because this is for serious cooks. And, so she kind of walked away and was just well, but, I don't want to just do this and do nothing all day. She wanted, to keep busy. Mm-hmm. When they were first there, when Paul was there the first time, before they were married, he ended up meeting a man named Paul Maurer. And if you've listened to one of our podcasts, that name might sound familiar. So later on, Julia, now they're married, and Julia's there. So he calls up his friend Paul and his new wife, Hadley.
Ah.
So they were, she was there, and they ended up spending a lot of time with Paul and Hadley. When Bumby, Jack, their Hemingway and Hadley's son, got married. He got married in Paris to a gal from Idaho, because he was over there also with the OSS. And he got married in Paris. And because Jack and his new wife, Puck, as they call her, they didn't know anybody. And so Julia stood in as the maid of honor.
That is so sweet. Oh my God, this is so crazy that they overlapped like that.
See, that's why I was like, I got to do a whole 6 degrees of separation for our podcast because it's just
Yeah,
crazy.
because Hadley was Hemingway's first wife,
Yeah,
if you didn't know that.
yeah,
So now she's remarried because Hemingway dumped her for another woman,
yeah,
and now she's hanging with Julia Childs and her hubby.
yep, yeah. I don't know that crazy.
So wild.
When they had the wedding, Sylvia Beach was there, Alice B. Toklas was there also because it was after Gertrude Stein had died. But here's all these ladies that we've talked about before end up, like I completely forgot about the Julia and Hadley connection until I reread the book again for the third time. I
So
was like, oh
wild.
my gosh.
Very cool.
Yeah. So on her 37th birthday, Paul bought her a book, La Russe Gastronomique, and it was 1,100 pages. It was a French cookbook. It's kind of like the Bible of all like original French cooking. But it was all in French. So she got this book and she was like, oh, like, cause she was, wanted to learn how to cook. And she was like, oh, but it's all in French. So there's a really cute scene in the movie where she's trying to decipher, he knows more French than she does. And she's trying to decipher what's in the book. And it's really cute. But so she decided to go to the court. She goes to the Cordon Bleu. And, she finally has to make way through the woman that was kind of in charge of admissions was kind of a ghastly woman and just basically, did, like, oh, you don't, she was French and she was like, oh, you don't want to be here. This isn't for you. And, Julia basically kept persisting. No, I want to be here. And she first enrolled her in, this basically like a side fun thing of learning how to cook. And she was like, no, this isn't what I want. So she finally convinced this woman, her name was Elizabeth Broussard, to be able to join the like full on like hardcore, French chef cooking. And so she got there at first, it was kind of difficult. And, again, she didn't know, go back to the calf brains. She doesn't really know how to cook. So she goes there and Max Bogenard, who was the chef that was in charge, he was, he was a very big French chef. Before that, he had worked with Escoffier, I believe, and a whole bunch of other very, very high-ranking chefs in French history, and decided he wanted to teach. And he and Julia had a really great friendship that lasted her entire time at Paris, which is really cute.
That is sweet.
But so she, she's at the class and she's, figuring all that. She's kind of becoming the star pupil. And she ends up meeting one day at one of the little American women groups that she meets Simone Beck and Louisette Berthaud. And these two other women decided to create a little, their own cooking class. And so they called it L'École des Trois Gourmands, the three gourmands. And so the three of them, ends up, start doing this little class, and they offered it. It was 20 francs to go to their class and, just to have a little French cooking lesson in their house. And they were actually getting quite a few people, especially American wives that were stationed over there. And Simone, or Simca, is how she always called her, Simca, and Louisette were working on a book. And they were working on a French cooking book for Americans. And so they were telling Julie about it, and the publisher, American, they were having kind of help them because they were both French. And so this American man was helping them, and they were having a lot of problems with him. And so they kept telling Julia, and Julia finally was like, well, what if I, helped you? And so they were like, oh, okay, this is, a great idea. So she starts helping them with it. And, we all know what that book turns out to be. But, she, started helping them. And she had a friend of hers in America named Avis Devoto. And Avis Devoto was the husband or the wife of Bernard Devoto. And he wrote an article about stainless steel knives. And just wrote this huge article about knives. And Julia loved the article so much that she sent him like a fan letter for the couple. Didn't even know him. Sent him a fan letter and 2 knives from France. And so Avis ends up responding to the letter. And she and Avis, because of that, ended up having like this lifelong friendship.
That is so cute. Who would know that sending a knife to somebody could create a lifelong friendship?
I know. Well, it's actually like really bad luck. Like you're not supposed to ever, if you ever give somebody a knife, you're supposed to also give them a penny and then they're supposed to give it back to you.
What?
Because
Where is this superstition coming from? Is this a French thing?
it goes, no, it kind of goes back to, it's like as a wedding gift, because if you give somebody a knife, it's kind of like you're cutting that. Like that's the superstition of it. So you're supposed to give a penny at the same time and then they give it back to you.
This is so funny. Well, I won't be mailing anyone any knives anytime soon. I don't think.
I don't think you probably really can mail people knives anymore. Anyway.
Yeah, I don't think that's actually legal anymore.
Yeah. So, here they're in Paris for all these years, and then sadly, in 1953, Paul is told that they have to leave Paris, and they end up being able to go to Marseille. So they were able to go still in France, but, she was just so sad. And that she had to leave Paris, and she was finished with cooking school. She had graduated from cooking school, and she was so sad that, but they're still in France. So she's down there, she's still working on the book, night and day. And now she has a whole different, slant on it because she's down there in Marseille where all the seafood's at.
Yeah.
So they go down there and she's like, writing these recipes and she's finding these fish. But then while she's finding these French fish that, are available down there, she's trying to think like, what's the American equivalent to this? What's, the English equivalent to this? So she did this exhaustive research on every single thing that was in that book.
That's wild. Is this why the book took 9 years?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. I think it probably would have taken longer if they didn't tell her this must be done.
Let's do it. Get it out.
Yeah. So later on that fall, they end up getting transferred to Germany at this point. Paul ended up getting pulled back to the U.S. for a meeting, and they actually accused him of all these things. They asked him if he was a contributor, if he was doing all these things, asking the company he kept, they asked him if he was a homosexual, all of these crazy things they were asking Paul. And he was kind of at that point, I'm kind of getting tired of this, but they shipped him off to Germany, which was actually a really prestigious role that he got to do. And overseeing the same thing again, he was doing all this stuff for, relations and exhibitions. And so at that point, he's kind of I don't know if I really want to do this. So, with the book, Houghton Mifflin, the publisher, had offered them an advance. And it was a very, back then, I think it was $250 or something in advance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, that's definitely more than $250 now, but still, that's just
not that much. No. Yeah.
So, they were trying to work with them, and they were so difficult to work with them that they actually were, they turned them down. The girls were like, no, we don't want to do this. We're going to just try this on our own. So Julia kept looking for other publishers, and she was talking to Avis about it. And, she kept sending all of these different, versions of it and chapters of it. And she would tell Avis, don't show this to anybody. But Avis was reading this and this is such an amazing book. And she had a friend named Bill Koshland who worked at the Knopf Publishing, which, nobody knows how to say that name either. Even in the movie, they joke about it, but yeah. And so she sends off the manuscript to them, and she, was just kind of what, they were like, oh, this is, at first they thought, oh, this is interesting, but it's just way too big. And they just push it aside. Then there was a woman that was named Judith Jones, and she was a editor for Doubleday. And in May 1948, she went to Europe for 3 weeks. And the story that, all of us have, she goes to Europe. She's on one of her last days. She's sitting in the Jardin des Tuileries, and she's crying because she has to think about leaving. And she doesn't want to, which is what, all of us have done.
Yeah, we've all been there. Yeah. If you actually like Paris, some people hate it.
So she walks back to her hotel, and, she's trying to think I just don't want to leave. I want to stay here. She realizes she doesn't have her purse. So she goes back to the park, and of course it's gone. And in her purse had, her tickets, her flight tickets, her passport, all of her money, had everything. So
wow.
She's like, is somebody trying to tell me something? Well, now she can't leave.
Yeah. She's stuck.
So she's kind of stuck. So, she was sitting there that night in her hotel. She had her room open. Somebody walked by that she knew from back in America. It was just all of these crazy things. So she thought, this is divine intervention. I need to stay. So she stays longer. She gets a job working for Doubleday in Paris. And while she was there, she finds this book that her boss was going to reject. And she looks at it, takes it home, looks at it, and she realizes, what is this book? This book's amazing. And it was Anne Frank's book.
She discovered it.
Yeah, so they were basically going to just push it aside and not publish it. And like Judith Jones was the one who basically was like, no, this definitely needs to be published.
Interesting.
Yeah, which is, one of the, could you imagine the world without that book? I mean, that's just such an amazing book. So she ends up, she also had met a Frenchman when she was there.
Happens to the best of us.
Also, yeah, exactly. It does happen. So in 1951, she returns to New York. And because, she was the one who, she had a lot of clout now because she found this book that instantly became this huge bestseller. So she goes and she gets a job. Knopf hires her to work as a editor. And again, so here it is years later, she finds another book that was about, they were thinking about rejecting, and she gets this book and she looks at it and she takes it home and she makes a bunch of recipes in it, including the boeuf bourguignon, and was just dying, and ends up getting, contacting Julia and saying, we think this book is amazing. We want to publish it.
Wow. And so is this the same woman that later Julia would be like, oh, I didn't really like her that much?
No. That's the girl that's the other side of Julie and Julia, the movie.
Yeah.
Yes. No, Judith Jones is like, yeah, she just passed away, actually, I think just a couple years ago. But
wow, she lived a long time.
Yeah, she was pretty amazing. No, the other one, Julie from Julie and Julia, the girl that went through all of the recipes.
Yeah, because I was reading on my research that Julia was like, I didn't really care. Why was it so hard for her?
Yeah, she wrote, as a diversion here, she wrote her book after that, which was a huge bestseller, Julie and Julia. She wrote this book right after that where, she wanted to learn to be a butcher. And so she went to New Jersey and she was having this affair with somebody, which, her husband was, so sweet and, wonderfully portrayed in the movie. And just her second book, I was just reading it like, this is horrific.
Wait, so you're talking about Julie?
Yeah, Julie.
That she ran off with the book. Wow, this is a big sidestep. Interesting.
Very big sidestep. But the movie itself, Julie and Julie, is so great. I wish it could only be just about Julia Child.
Yeah. I think Julia Child feels that way too.
Yeah. So, so here, in May 1959, Julie and Paul now are sent off to Oslo. So they were over in Oslo, and that's when Judith sent her a letter saying, we really want to publish this book, and we think it will do for French cooking what The Joy of Cooking did for standard American cooking.
Wow, that's huge.
Which is, humongous. So she said that, but she had told her, she said, French Recipe for American Cooks is not a good title. And
yeah, that's kind of a mouthful.
Yeah. So she, she was just kind of like, well, we, do whatever, whatever you think. So on November 18th, 1960, Judith wrote her a letter and said, how about mastering the art of French cooking?
That sounds much sexier.
Yeah, so great. And it's the original second part of the title was Cooking for the Servantless American Cooks.
Oh, wow. Ooh, what?
Yeah, eventually that fell off,
Yeah, I mean, the servantless? Okay.
Yeah, not good. So on May 19th, 1961, Paul decided to leave the government, and they decided to head back. And they moved into a house that they found in Cambridge. And she was there, and she decided to, the book was finally getting published. It was finally released on October 16th, 1961. And so she and Simca came over from France. Louisette kind of didn't contribute a whole lot. And it was mostly Simca and Julia that did all of the work. And Louisette just kind of, she always had some excuse. I have a headache, or I don't want, can't do this. So
it's always that one guy.
Her name is still on the original book, but I don't think it's I think it's the second edition. She's not on that one.
I mean, well deserved.
Yeah, they kicked her out. So, but they come over, and because at that time, here it's the 60s, and you didn't have, the juggernaut of marketing that we have so easily now. And so they planned a book tour to go across the US, and they started in New York and New York City. She ended up meeting James Beard, who is actually from Oregon. He's from Portland, Oregon, and he was basically, we call him America's first foodie. He was one of the ones that had one of the very first cooking TV shows. He's just like, every chef in America knows who James Beard is. He was an amazing, amazing person. But they ended up becoming friends. And so while she was in New York, she met him, and he basically introduced her to everybody who was anybody in the world of cooking.
So he liked her.
Yeah, they had a lifelong friendship. It's pretty awesome.
Sounds like she befriended everybody she met.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, she just seems like such a, she was the, what did she get the award for happiness?
Cheerful, yeah, the cheery lady.
Yeah. So they ended up going on the NBC Today show. Here it's 1961, and they were going to have them make something. And so she thought, well, what's the easiest thing and the most French thing is to make a French omelet. Well, she gets there, and all they had was a hot plate, and she's like, we can't really make an omelet on a hot plate, because you need to have this consistent heat and quicken. And so they ended up not doing that. But when she was in New York, she also met another chef because of James Beard, Jacques Pepin. And he was a French chef, actually. He had worked in Élysée Palace, and he came to the U.S. And another side note, he has a daughter. Her name's Claudine. She lived in
another Claudine. I love it.
But so, by 1962, January 1962, the book was already in its third printing.
Wow. And
so she received a check for $2,600. Today, that would be $22,000.
What?
Yeah.
Inflation is real, guys.
Yeah, it's great. It's so crazy. I know you always think like, somebody, you can live in Paris for $1,000. It's like, I want to live in Paris for $1,000, but with this, like with what the money we make now.
Oh God, impossible. Wow. Interesting. But I mean, did she have to really work because she was the heiress of, that fortune? Did they just give her a bunch of money? Did she even have to do all this?
She probably didn't have to, but she didn't exactly have the closest relationship with her father. Her mom ended up passing away when she, I think her mom was in her 60s when she died. And her father, she and Paul were, these crazy liberals that went off to Paris.
And gay, maybe.
Yeah, and she and his father, like she'd always like wind him up talking about politics and saying these things, and he would just kind of flip out. So, I'm sure nothing's really much mentioned that I've ever seen about inheritance, but I'm sure there definitely was some there.
Yeah, they still had their secrets.
Yeah, they definitely, it's got to keep some. So in February 1963, she was invited to be on this TV show on WGBH in Boston, and it was called What I've Been Reading. And so she goes on this TV show, and it's supposed to be a 30-minute spot. And she thought, what the heck am I going to talk about for 30 minutes? I mean, that's a long time.
It is a long time.
So she, again, brings I'm just going to bring, a copper bowl and my whisk and some eggs and a pan and all this stuff. And she gets there, and they actually had, a more of a proper setup than the Today Show had. And while she's talking, she makes an omelet. She's standing there, she's whipping it up, and she's making this omelet. And after the show was over, the TV channel was sent a ton of letters from people saying, we want to see more of that. Can we see more? We need to see more of her cooking, all this stuff. So they ended up contacting Julie and saying, what if we tried out and you did 3 half-hour pilots episodes of cooking?
That's so cool. That's how she got a cooking school. I mean, cooking show. That is really cool.
Yeah. So on July 26, 1962, the French chef, the first episode of The French Chef debuted, and she was making a French omelet.
I think that is so cool.
Was coq au vin, and then she did soufflés.
And then she got her own show.
Yeah. So, at this time, too, it was the Kennedys were in the White House. So there was, this glamour. And, the Kennedys had a French chef that they brought over, René Verdon. And so, it was kind of the perfect timing for her, too, because at the same time, it was also when, after the war, Americans were like, they wanted easy, like canned goods and things like that were like kind of all the rage. And they were kind of worried at first, like, is this book going to be like, nobody's going to want to buy this. Nobody wants to make this food anymore. They want fast, they want easy and convenient. So, but then you have the Kennedys in the White House and they have this French chef and they're throwing these lavish parties and everybody wanted to, have that glamorous life.
Yeah. I mean, you can like put it on for the weekend for your friends or whatever.
Yeah. So it's perfect. But so in 1963, she ended up, it was 26 shows premiered that year. And she did 10 seasons until 1973 for 191 episodes.
Wow.
Yeah. But it wasn't until the second season that she ended the show with the way that's like everybody, when they think of Julia Child, they think of how she goes, Bon appetit.
Yeah. She had such a voice and such a demeanor.
She didn't say that until the second season.
That was a new thing.
Yeah. So, but here she's on this cooking show, and so she and Paul decided to go back to France and to visit Simca, and Simca and her husband had a house in Provence, and it's a little tiny town outside of Grasse and above Cannes. And she goes down there and, she's down there, she's having this lovely time. And she's like, oh, too bad we can't stay. And it's this big piece of property. And so Simca's husband said, well, what if we give you part of the property? You could build a house.
What? That's so cool. That's a good friend.
Yeah, that's a very good friend. So they were like, okay. So they made this deal that said, like, when they were done with it, they would just give everything back to the family. Like, there was no, like, we own this land. There was this wonderful friendship agreement. So they built this little house, and it was called La Pichon is what they called it. And it means the little one in Provence. And so they built this little house. And now today, actually, you can rent that house on Airbnb.
That's really cool. How much does it cost? Do we know?
I think a friend of mine sent it to me. I don't know when it first happened, like a year or two ago. It's a couple $1,000s a night.
Oh, man. Well, Claudine, once the podcast gets huge and we have a budget, let's go down there.
Yeah, like people like join our Patreon and we'll do a live stream from.
Yeah, we'll do live from Julia Child's Airbnb
house. I guess it's not like anything of hers is in it anymore, but it's still like, again,
her energy is there.
Her energy would be there. I would just like absolutely die. I'd probably like hug the wall or something.
Lick the wall.
So 1964, the book was already in its 6th printing. And so it's like, it's this huge thing. And so they, told her, you need to do another volume because the original manuscript for the book was so huge that there's no way they could publish everything in it. I mean, they had like one of the publishers they met with said this would be like you'd have to do this in like 10 volumes. Like it's just too long. So they made another one, and, she kept, she was meticulous about testing recipes. She would test recipes with French ingredients and American ingredients and just make sure every single thing in the book was perfect and do it over and over again. So it took her forever to write this. And she would write, there's little stories with some of the recipes. It's not just, coq au vin and here's your list and do this, like some of them actually include little stories and little things like that. So
a personal touch.
The personal touch. So she was working on this first ever. And Judith finally was like, you need to have it done by this point.
Get it done, lady.
Get it done. So, they're back in the U.S. at this point. So, but in October 1974, Paul was diagnosed with having had a small heart attack.
Mm.
And it was so small that they were just like, they weren't even, he probably didn't even notice when he had it, but he then became, had some chest pains and his head became kind of foggy. And so by 1989, he had a few strokes and was definitely kind of slowing down. So he, since he had retired, he basically had just been, Julia's photographer and, he painted and he assisted her doing whatever she wanted, helping her. When she was first doing the book, one of her ideas was to have pictures or drawings of the recipe from the cook's perspective. So if you look at the cookbook, you're looking at like what you'd be looking at the chicken and trussing the chicken from the point of view of you looking down on it, instead of most of them are like these fancy glamour shots off from the side, you know?
I love how they were just so down to earth all along.
I know.
Also, I want to be Julia Child's husband.
I know, but they're just like, and Stanley Tucci plays him in the movie, and it's just like the just cutest thing ever. It's like they literally have the cutest relationship. But so, you know, they had, you know, he worked really closer with them. What another really cute thing about them was every year on Valentine's Day, they would make their own cards. Like there's a picture, there's one of them like in a bathtub, and then she loved rubber stamps. So she loved
so
rubber
cute.
stamps. I know. So like there's a picture in the book, My Life in France, that we're doing in the book club for August, that they're like, they basically stamped it. And then, you know, we're like thinking of you or something, and they're looking at each other, really cute, but it's not like, it's like this adorable cuteness, not like, oh, gross.
Yeah. They're just like, they're genuine.
Yeah.
They're authentic.
Yeah. So, and it was amazing because like, you know, Paul supported her, you know, even when they returned to Paris at a time when that was not the role for a woman. Like he supported whatever she wanted to do, to increase her knowledge, to just like follow her dream. You know, they never had kids. I think there was a problem that they couldn't have kids, I think that's kind of been hinted at, but
I was curious about that because I was like, why didn't they have kids? They seem like so in love. Not that you have to have kids, but I was curious if they didn't want them or they couldn't.
I think that they couldn't, because there's a part in the book where she talks about her sister getting pregnant, and then they bring it up in the movie too, where she gets, you know, definitely looks pretty upset about it, that, you know, and he was like, it's okay, you know, we'll have our time.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it was just so like the way that he supported her and everything was just like the sweetest thing in the world. But Paul eventually had to go into a nursing home, and no matter where she was, because at this point, you know, she did all these other TV shows too. She's traveling all over. She wrote all of these different books. So she's traveling all over, but no matter what she did, no matter where she was in the world, she made sure at 2:00 every single day they talked on the phone.
Oh, that's so sweet.
I know.
It makes me so sad. I want Paul to be around forever.
I know. See, I told you when I finished reading the book for the 3rd time, I was like crying.
Oh, so did she outlive Paul, I guess?
He did. So on May 12th, 1994, he died. And, you know, she kept their house up in Cambridge. So she'd always was close to him. And then after he died, she ended up moving to Montecito, California. And, you know, he was 10 years older than her also from the start. So, you know, that, you know, he lived a pretty good long life considering, but she ended up moving to Montecito, California. And, you know, over her life, she wrote 17 different books, including My Life in France, that she wrote with her nephew, Alex Prudhomme, who was Paul's brother's son. Mm-hmm. And so she, you know, it was released about 2 years after she passed away. But, you know, she did 11 different TV shows. She was on TV from 1963 to $2,000 till 2000. And she, you know, she was she wasn't the first, but she was one of the very first television cooking shows.
I love that, because now you look at cooking shows and it's a lot of like beautiful people or glamour, and she was just so like normal, run of the mill, you know, woman that just had this big personality.
Yeah, you could stream all of her original TV shows on PBS on their app. You could get.
I love PBS.
They're pretty. I mean, they're pretty. It's just so amazing. I could just watch her all day. But she did different TV shows with. She did also a whole series with Jacques Pepin. And Jacques Pepin, that I had mentioned earlier, his daughter's name's Claudine, and he had come to Portland to do a book signing after he released his biography. And I remember going to it, and he was like talking. He was like, "Well, Julia and I," and I'm like, "Oh my God, just Julia and I!" Like
casual.
But James Beard, who I mentioned earlier, who is also from Portland, when he was older, and you know, she was also a little older, he would do these cooking classes down in Gerhardt, Oregon, is a town on the beach, which was very close to his family. It's also very close to my family. And he would spend his summers when he was a child and basically, you know, a lot of time during his life down there. And he decided when he was older to do a cooking class. And he did it at the high school in the summer. And I've met some of the people that actually took the cooking class from him. But there was a summer or two that he did it with Julia.
Mm.
So Julie and James Beard are down there giving a cooking class. And that also makes my brain want to explode.
I know. I want to hang out with all these people.
I know. It's just, oh God, so amazing. But so 10 years after Paul died, Julia also died, and she had died of kidney failure. And it was 2 days before her birthday on August 13th, 2004. And I remember that day. I remember waking up in the morning and turning on the news and seeing it. I literally gasped. I was like, oh! And I didn't know Julia like I know her now. Like if I heard that now, I probably would just be devastated. But
yeah, she was such a celebrity.
So amazing. But what I love is her very last meal was French onion soup.
Yeah, I was reading that. I mean, that is the best meal. And she was in her 90s, right?
Yeah. She was in her 90s.
She lived a long life. She lived a long, great life. They had so much fun.
There's so much fun. Like she definitely lived it up. But another one of my favorite things is in 2001, they donated her entire Cambridge kitchen to the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. And when they moved there, and Julie was so doggone tall that they would also redesign the kitchen. And Paul was really good at they'd work together and redesign, and he'd lift the countertops and lift everything so they were higher off the ground. And she liked everything really organized. So he created this pegboard where they would lay it down on the floor and they'd circle all the pots and pans with a marker, and then they'd hang it on the wall so that she always knew where the pots and pans went.
That's so cool.
And I'll post pictures on my website because there's a bunch of really great pictures from the Smithsonian. And in the movie, Julie and Julia, I think they used that kitchen, or they did an exact replica of it because it's pretty
very cool. I've never actually seen the movie, so I think I'm going to go sit down and watch that now.
To see it, and especially because then also the apartment they use is theirs, is not the Rue de Lou one, but it's this building that's on Rue de Seine. And I'm sure as soon as you see it, you're going to know because it's right behind the Institut de France. And
very cool.
Fall, it's always covered with ivy that's changing into oranges and reds, and it's so beautiful. But yeah, her story's pretty amazing. In Paris, she would always go to the cooking store Du Salon, I think it's called Du Liron, and over in Les Halles. And so when I went there the first time, I had to go there too. And I bought a French rolling pin and some other things. But you just go in there, and I just imagine Julia walking through the aisles and, buying whisks.
Well, she must have been such a sight because she was so big. And, French women or French people in general, they are known for being kind of smaller people, and this giant 6'2" American woman.
6'2", yeah, going, bon appetit.
Yeah, I mean, that voice. I just love that she just was true to herself, because I think, a lot of women would be like, oh, I need to hide because I'm already too big. Yeah. But she was just fully herself, which I really admire.
She was pretty amazing. And I also love the fact that, she was basically 38, 39 years old when she decided, she wanted to, to start writing this book and do all this stuff. So she was in her 40s when she basically started the life that we know of.
It's never too late to reinvent yourself. You can do it at any age. And I think that's something that gets away from a lot of us, because we're always like, oh, I have my 20s to figure it all out, and then life is over. And it's like, no, you can do whatever you want. Whatever age.
Yeah, look what she did. Look what she did when she was in her 40s, and she became, this persona and this amazing woman that did so much that, in 10 years ago, I couldn't find an updated number, but 10 years ago, Mastering the Art of French Cooking had sold 1.5 million copies.
Wow. They kept republishing it. It's so crazy. How cool.
How crazy. And I saw one article where it said, don't ever, somebody put, I don't even remember what it was on, but it said, don't cook, don't bother with this cookbook. This was written within the last 10 years. Don't bother with this cookbook. You won't cook anything from it. And I was like, oh, I take that personally.
I will come for you.
Yeah, I use her. I always have used her Boeuf Bourguignon. I always use her quiche recipe. There's things that I just know by heart now, because if I'm going to make it, I only make Julia's.
Oh, I love that. I need to actually try some of her recipes. I never have. We're reading the book this month. I'm excited to discover more about her and retrace her steps, because it's funny. A lot of the stuff we talk about, I've been to the places and I didn't even realize those people were connected to them. So it's really interesting.
Yeah. She's pretty fascinating. I love her to death.
We all love her. That's why she has stuck out to all of us. Even we haven't read her book or even seen her, everyone knows who Julia Child is. It's so wild. Well, thank you, Claudine, for giving us so much information. This is information you cannot just find on Google. I know because I tried to Google our guest before and you give me so much more. So thank you for that. And I'm excited for our next episode.
We'll see you then.
All right.
Bon appetit! Thank you for listening to Paris History Avec a Hemingway. If you want to find out some more, you could always find me on my Instagram page, Claudine Bleu Blanc Rouge, and that's BLEU, as in the French way to spell it. And each day I post a daily history lesson about a person or a place or something in Paris, or it's lots of fun facts. And then also at ClaudineHemingway.com, where you can also sign up for my newsletter there.